That night, my phone buzzed with a message from my son. "Mom, heat up the leftovers in the fridge. Don't waste them." I stared at the screen, my heart steady, not broken. After 68 years of cooking for others, I finally lost my appetite for disrespect, so I packed my bags, left the key on the counter, and walked out without a word. But that okay I sent wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything they never saw coming. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories travel. I woke before the sun and let the house tell me what needed doing. The coffee maker clicked. The heater sighed, and I folded yesterday's towels into neat thirds like my mother taught me. I wiped the crumbs from the counter with the side of my hand, then rinsed the cloth and wrung it until the water ran clear. The quiet felt heavier than usual, as if it had weight I could lift. My phone buzzed across the laminate like a beetle. I glanced at the screen. A group message lit it up. Family dinner. The header wore a wine glass and a confetti sparkle. Below it, names scrolled past, and then mine. Not Mom, not Arliss. Household. As if I were the dishwasher or the utility bill. My fingers hovered above the glass. I took a screenshot without a sound, like pressing a flower in a book. The fridge hummed. Indifferent. I set the phone face up on the counter and wiped in small circles, pretending the shine could make the word they chose for me less true. I paused over the junk drawer and lined the pens by color, a small parade no one would see. Through the window, the neighbor's flag barely moved. I listened for a car door that didn't come. In the sink, a single spoon waited from last night's tea. I washed it like it mattered. Avery's white shirt waited on the ironing board, crisp cotton faint scent of starch. He's always liked his collars sharp. Once, when he was 8, he insisted I sit right behind the team bench so he could turn and see me. "You'll clap the loudest," he said. He was right. I warmed the iron, dragged it slowly along the sleeve, and watched steam lift like a prayer you keep private. I laid the shirt across the back of a chair and smoothed the placket with 2 fingers. Next to it, a family photo in a silver frame showed the 5 of us grinning on a pier at Lake Texoma. 5 summers and a lifetime ago, I heard myself say, not loud. He used to ask if I'd sit near him at graduations. On the shelf below the photo, a labeled binder rested where I always keep it. Zip bags by month, receipts, notices. The ordinary paper trail of a life that pays attention. I slid a fresh plastic sleeve into the binder and wrote today's date in tidy numbers. Order soothes me. Lists have bones, they let soft things stand. Somewhere between the steam and the photo, I felt a space open where pride used to live. The phone buzzed again. I didn't need to open it to know whose picture would be smiling. Aileen posts the way some people breathe. The preview banner floated across the black glass. Uptown tonight. There were stars and a skyline in the little thumbnail. I caught my reflection there, a thin outline over their plans. The stove clock read 5:27 p.m. Traffic on the tollway would be thick. They must already be on their way, laughing at the stoplights. I turned the phone over, face down, as if I were tucking in child who didn't know better than to keep chattering. Outside, the neighbor's sprinkler ratcheted in arcs across winter grass. I straightened the dish towels and listened to the house breathe through its vents. Dinner hour came and spread itself thin without asking me to sit. I heated a small pan of chicken noodle soup and watched the noodles roll over each other like little moons. I left the dining room lights off, letting the last violet stripe of evening hold the edges of the table. One chair always angles a little away. Mine. Habit. I touched the top rail where my hand rests between bites. The TV murmured in the living room, a commercial for something called the Family Dining Awards. Flashed plates I would never taste. I ate standing by the stove because plates feel lonelier when you set them for one. On the fridge, a magnet held Jonelle's choir schedule. Sunday rehearsals circled in purple pen. She still leaves her sheet music on my desk, the corners softened by use. I rinsed the bowl, turned it in the towel until it squeaked, and set it upside down on the rack. The kitchen window kept my reflection company. I folded my arms and let the room be dim. I have learned that darkness, chosen, is gentler than the kind that chooses you. A train horn floated from far off, the long kind that says someone is leaving and someone is waiting. I pictured the restaurant's white tablecloths and the way Aileen leans toward a camera. I turned the stove knob until the flame disappeared with a small blue kiss. The phone trembled again against the counter. I turned it over and saw his name, Avery. A preview. Only a line and a half, like someone nudging me from another room. Mom, heat up the leftovers in the fridge. Don't waste them. The words were tidy, efficient, the way a memo is. I didn't open it. I let my breath steady the way you steady a thread before you push it through the needle's eye. So this is how a title disappears, I said to the sink. One message at a time. I wiped the last damp ring from the counter and walked down the hall. In the spare room, I keep my desk, and in the top drawer, I keep my order. The folder labeled Utilities and Legal waited. January through March, clipped with a brass fastener. I rested my hand on the tab until the warmth of my skin spread into the paper. The drawer smelled faintly of cedar. Beneath the utility tabs lay older folders, insurance, wills, the long mortgage. Paper is memory's spine. It keeps what people forget. I didn't reply. Not yet. Silence was my first signature. I waited longer than I meant to before I finally woke my phone. The lock screen flared like a small stage, and there I was in the front row with no lines, notifications lined up like ushers. I slid a thumb and let them in. The first thing I saw was Aileen's new post, bright and tidy. She had tagged Avery, the children, and her mother. The caption glittered. Proud night for our family of 5. Promotion, dinners, family F5. I zoomed in until the pixels softened the smiles. Avery wore the crisp white shirt I ironed at noon, the one I set on the bed as if good cloth could teach a child to be gentle. I didn't cry. I tried the words out loud to hear how they fit in my mouth. Family of 5. Sometimes absence is louder than a shout. I placed the phone face down again, but the phrase kept glowing behind my eyes like the afterimage of a camera flash. I kept scrolling, as if the answer might be in the next square. The restaurant lighting made everyone look warm, lacquered by success. In the middle of the table sat a rose gold candle holder, a little bowl of light I once wrapped with green tissue and gave to Aileen for Christmas. Comments stacked like confetti. Beautiful family. So proud. My thumb twitched and a heart flashed red, then panic. I unliked it and felt foolish for moving so fast over strangers' praise. In my kitchen, the light was the refrigerator's blue bruise and the stove clock's stubborn green. An empty bowl sat upside down on the drying rack from the soup I'd finished earlier. The clock read 7:15. I carried the phone to my desk and opened the notebook where I pay bills, wrote the date in a small, practiced hand, and left the page waiting. The air in the house held its breath, the way a room does before someone says something they can't take back. Messages looked the same as always, which is another kind of sting. No missed calls. The family thread sat near the top, its icon pale and silent. I had turned alerts off after the first flood this afternoon. In the morning, Avery had only said, "I'll be out late tonight, Mom." Like a weather report nobody argues with. I pressed the thread open and watched the empty bubbles sit still. I could feel the temptation tugging. Ask why. Press for your place. But I have learned that asking for a chair does not make one appear. In the corner of my planner, I wrote 2 words, left out. Then I added a third, underlined, document. The letters steadied my breath. Evidence can be simple. Dates, screenshots, the way a caption chooses a number and dares you to swallow it. When you name something, you make it visible. And visibility, even lonely, is power. I set the table because routine is a language the body trusts. 1 plate, a folded napkin, water in the thick glass with the chip I always turn toward myself. A second chair remained pulled back just an inch, the way it always is when I sit with someone I love. Tonight I left it untouched. The shape of it stretched across the tile, a lengthened shadow like a road I used to take. I stood there longer than a person should, hand on the chair top where I often rest a palm before grace. I was part of that table once, I said, and the refrigerator hummed to fill what I would not. Outside, a car rolled by and the porch light across the street clicked on as if to show me how small houses keep their promises. I touched the edge of the napkin, then folded it once more, smaller, tidier, until it looked like something that had never been used. The phone buzzed against the placemat and slid a fraction, a fish pulling at the line. I turned it over and read the text as if it were a label on something I hadn't decided to buy. Mom, heat up the leftovers in the fridge. Don't waste them. 10 seconds can be a lifetime. I counted them with the slow patience you use for cooling sugar so it won't burn. Anger flickered, then calmed, then took a chair of its own. I opened messages and typed, "Okay, watch the letters sit there like a closed door. A reply can be a match." I put the phone face down again and went to the cabinet by the laundry room. The old leather folder was right where it had been for years, under the tablecloths. Property. It smelled faintly of cedar and paper. Inside were warranty deeds, closing statements, property tax receipts, utility account setups, quiet pieces of authority that never needed applause. I laid them out on the dining table, smoothing corners the way I used to smooth a boy's cowlick before picture day. Some power doesn't talk, it waits. The house changed when I did that. Nothing moved, but something rebalanced. I gathered the papers back into the folder, slid it under my arm, and walked the circuit of the rooms, hallway, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, touching door frames as if blessing them. The dishwasher's red light blinked, finished. A neighbor's sprinkler hissed. The night had a click to it, a hinge finding place. I returned to the desk and flipped the notebook to a clean page. I wrote a single line so I would remember who I was at this hour. I give without announcement. Then I went back to the phone and lifted it, heavy as a book. I sent okay an hour later, when silence could echo properly. The refrigerator light broke the dark like a small, faithful moon. Its hum filled the silence that belonged to no one. Inside, on the middle shelf, sat a white takeout box with a strip of tape scrawled in marker. Mom, leftovers. The handwriting wasn't Avery's. The M was smudged, the dash crooked, the word small as if whoever wrote it wasn't sure whether Mom was still a title to be used. I touched the lid, the chill bit through my fingertip. I didn't open it. The noodles inside had collapsed into a dull coil. Sauce clinging to plastic like memory refusing to let go. My mouth didn't water. It clenched. Even the box has my name misspelled, I whispered. The sound didn't echo. The refrigerator swallowed it whole. I reached for my phone, turned the camera on, and snapped a photo, the blue-white light catching the shine on the box. Timestamp, 9:42 p.m. The screen froze it for me. Proof that the box existed, that I did too, if only as a label on leftovers. Another piece for the paper trail. I closed the door gently so the magnets wouldn't rattle. The hum stayed behind me like a witness that refused to speak. I set the box on the counter and slid it into the microwave. The door closed with a soft thud. the kind that sounds like patience running out. The rotating plate began to turn. Slow circles, a clock disguised as an appliance. I wasn't hungry. I only wanted to see what it meant to follow instructions. Avery's text glowed faintly on the counter. Heat up the leftovers. I had never failed a task he gave me. When he was 16, he told me over spaghetti. Mom, family means eating together. I watched the microwave tick down from 30 seconds and thought about how quickly words can expire. The beep announced itself to no audience. I sat down, took a fork, and tasted the celebration I hadn't been invited to. It was cold in the middle. I chewed once, twice, and stopped. The empty chair beside me looked the same as it had all evening, its back turned just slightly, waiting for permission that would never come. The quiet between us grew thick, a silence so dense it might leave fingerprints. The phone chimed again, not from family but from the bank. Shared card transaction, Uptown Prime, 187.64. The number shimmered like insult. I stared until the zeros blurred. I took another photo of the notification, lined it neatly in my gallery beside the takeout box, a digital ledger of affection measured in receipts. If you can't be part of the table, I heard myself say, own the table. The printer in the corner clicked awake, the little green light blinking, obedient as always. The photo slid out, shiny, undeniable. I let it cool on the desk, the ink drying into permanence. I slipped it into a clear sleeve marked expenses. Paper trails don't raise their voices. They simply wait until someone needs the truth spelled out. I waited too. Midnight came and passed without ceremony. The house stayed still, the air thick with the hum of machines doing their jobs. I scrolled through my phone again, not looking for words but for signs of life. Janelle's laughter floated from a video, her face glowing in restaurant light, her small hand waving a sparkler while someone off camera shouted, "To Dad!" I smiled, or something close to it. I locked the phone and placed it face down. "They'll call tomorrow," I said, out of habit, not love. The sentence tasted like medicine, necessary, bitter, oddly calming. The refrigerator clicked off for a moment, then on again, steady, faithful, pretending to care for what people leave behind. I went to the bedroom and pulled my old suitcase from the closet. The zipper rasped like a warning. I laid it open on the bed and filled it the way I fill my days, slowly, deliberately. First, the leather folder marked property. Then a few changes of clothes, folded military neat. I added my binder of documents, the one labeled utilities and legal. Finally, I took the framed photo of Avery at 8 years old, holding a baseball glove too big for his hand. I set it on top, the glass catching the reflection of my own face, older, quieter, still waiting to be recognized. "You can't replace the mother who signed your first lease," I said to the reflection. The suitcase zipper closed with a final sound, a line drawn in metal instead of ink. I stood in the doorway for a long breath, eyes drawn toward the faint glow from the kitchen. I had left the refrigerator open just a crack. The light spilled onto the floor like a reminder. I didn't turn it off. Let it watch the leftovers, since no one else cared to. I finally tapped the word I'd left waiting all night. Okay. The screen dimmed as if it, too, understood that the word meant enough. I slid down the control panel and switched on Do Not Disturb, toggled off read receipts, and placed the phone face down on the table. The small click it made was quieter than a sigh, but heavier than one. 12:07, blinked on the stove clock. The suitcase waited by the door, half in the hallway light, half in shadow. I listened to the hum of the fridge and the steady tick of the wall clock. Both sounded like guardians counting time for me until morning. At the desk, I drew my chair close, the wheels creaking the way old knees do when getting back to work. I opened the Utilities and Legal folder and logged into my accounts: water, electricity, insurance, HOA. Each password went into the manager, each renewal date copied neatly into my notebook. I highlighted the ones that were in my name alone. Calm felt like paperwork, measured, squared, clean. I wrote a reminder to call Cousin Frida at 8 sharp. She was both a lawyer and someone who didn't treat me like an antique. Tonight, order was my lullaby. The email ping startled me. I hadn't expected new mail at this hour. The subject line read, "Household Authorization, Signature Request." It came from Aileen, forwarded by accident, or maybe arrogance. I opened it carefully, scrolling through paragraphs of legal sugarcoating. The form named me household manager, granting general access to property-related communications, but no ownership, no title, no vote. A housekeeper with a surname. I felt my pulse settle into a colder rhythm. I forwarded the document to my own account. Subject line, "Scanned signature draft. Evidence." Then I took screenshots of the metadata, the timestamps glowing like coordinates on a map no one thought I could read. The printer whirred once and produced a copy. I let the ink dry beside my mug. Quiet victories smell like toner. Avery's name pulsed on the screen. First the call, then the message. "You up?" I let it ring into silence. My own reflection floated on the black glass, calm, unmoved. I had spent decades answering calls before the second ring, smoothing tempers, feeding egos, rescuing dinners. Not tonight. Silence could do the labor I once did for free. I turned the camera on instead and photographed my deed folder, the embossed notary stamps, the dated receipts from the HOA. I zoomed close enough to see the raised seal and whispered, "Mine." Relief came in the smallest way, a text bubble from Anita. Earlier, I had written, "If I leave tonight, can I sleep on your couch?" Her reply was instant. Door code is the same. "Come." I stood, stretched the stiffness out of my back, and moved the suitcase to the hallway. On the dining table, I left a sealed yellow envelope marked "Documents for Review." It was addressed to myself. Proof again that I was still handling things properly. As I reached for my coat, another vibration fluttered through the phone. A photo from Eton, the community hall rose, each chair marked with a sticky note for Sunday's choir rehearsal. One note read, "Grandma's seat." The handwriting was large and careful, his G slightly backward. I saved the image to my gallery and didn't reply. Some messages deserve only presence, not response. The picture steadied me more than any apology could. By the time the house fell asleep, my silence was already doing the talking. Morning came softly through Anita's lace curtains, the kind of light that doesn't demand anything. I woke on her couch with the blanket still tucked around my shoulders. Anita was already in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 mismatched mugs. "You slept like someone who finally stopped apologizing," she said, and it wasn't a question. I smiled at the edge of her kindness, small but real. The scent of coffee met the faint lemon polish from her floorboards, a domestic peace I hadn't felt in years. My phone sat face down on the coffee table, vibrating once as if testing whether I was ready. 9 missed calls from Avery, 2 from Aileen. I didn't open any of them. But there, at the top of the screen, was a text from Eton. The same picture as before, a row of folding chairs, one tagged with a sticky note. The words "Grandma's seat" written in a child's steady hand. I zoomed in on the photo until the paper texture filled the screen. Etan's careful G curved backward, the ink faint where the pen must have run out mid-letter. "He still remembers I exist," I murmured. Anita looked over, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You should go Sunday," she said, voice soft. "Just sit in the back. Let him see you're still part of his story." I nodded. though the thought of walking into a room where my name had been erased from the table made my throat tighten. Still, I saved the image, forwarded it to my own email labeled Keepsakes, Legal Archive. Tenderness doesn't cancel foresight. Both can live in the same folder. A sharp knock cut through the quiet. Anita frowned, set down her cup, and peeked through the side curtain. "It's your boy," she whispered. Avery stood on the porch, holding 2 takeout coffees like offerings. His face was pale in the morning sun. I stayed seated, smoothing the blanket across my lap. "Mom, can we talk?" he said when Anita opened the door. I gestured toward the table. "Coffee's fine right there." He obeyed, placing 1 cup down, his movements careful, rehearsed. "You could have told me you were upset," he said, the sentence brittle from guilt. I looked at him evenly. "You could have told me I was invited." The air folded around us, thin and tense, like the seconds before thunder. He sat opposite me, the mug between us cooling faster than his excuses. "Aileen thought it might be awkward," he started. "She didn't mean to." I lifted a hand. I stopped believing in "didn't mean to" years ago. My voice wasn't sharp, just final. I reached for my binder and opened it with the slow precision of a woman counting breaths. I slid the printed email across the table. The title glared up. Household Authorization. Signature Request. His eyes flicked over it, then up to me. I saw the exact second understanding hit him. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was earned. "This," I said quietly, tapping the corner of the page, "is why you never call before dinner. You only call after." The truth didn't need volume. It sat between us like gravity. After he left, the room deflated. The door clicked shut with more courtesy than the conversation deserved. I sipped the cold coffee he'd brought and opened my phone. A single voicemail waited. Aileen's number. I pressed play. The recording was short. The first seconds a muffled office sound, then her voice, clear and careless. "She'll calm down. She always does." I stopped it halfway through. Pressed play again just to be sure I'd heard it right. I saved the file under my evidence folder, renamed it Pattern 1. Then I whispered, "Not this time." The words landed softly but stayed. By noon. My silence had more weight than their excuses combined. The morning light slid through the colored glass of the Plano Community Hall, tinting everything gold and soft blue. I walked in quietly, my heels tapping against the polished floorboards that smelled faintly of lemon oil and old varnish. The folding chairs stood in straight lines, a small army of order. And there, 3rd row from the front, sat one with a yellow sticky note. In a child's rounded handwriting, "Grandma's seat." I touched the top of the chair, the metal cool beneath my palm, and then sat down. The plastic creaked slightly, holding me and not holding me all at once. From the stage, Eaton waved, wide, innocent, proud. I waved back, a smile pressing against the ache that had settled behind my ribs. "They remember," I whispered, "even when they're told not to." Aileen arrived late, her heels clicking too loudly, her phone clutched like a lifeline. She stopped short when she saw me sitting there. The pause was only a heartbeat, but it stretched. "Oh," she said, forcing a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I didn't know you'd come." I met her gaze evenly. "Neither did I." The words landed softly, a shared truth and a quiet boundary. She laughed once, brittle, and sat 2 rows ahead, scrolling on her phone before the service even began. Eaton glanced between us, his brow wrinkling with confusion that no child should have to carry. Around us, chatter filled the air like static before a storm. When the choir began, the first notes of "You Are My Sunshine" rippled through the room. The children's voices rose, sweet and imperfect. Etan's was clear as water. He sang the line, "You make me happy when skies are gray," while looking right at me. My chest tightened. Anita, standing in the back, caught my eye and nodded, her presence steady and grounding. Aileen didn't look up once. Her thumb scrolled endlessly, face lit by the blue of her screen instead of her son's joy. I gripped the edge of my seat, not to hold myself in place, but to stay connected to the sound, to Etan, to proof that I still belonged to something that sang. After the applause faded and the crowd began to disperse, Aileen approached me. Her tone carried the false warmth of someone trying to tidy up a mess without touching it. "Avery wanted me to say sorry if we made you feel excluded," she said. I met her eyes. "You didn't make me feel excluded," I replied, voice calm as marble. "You just proved it." Her lips parted, but no sound followed. Anita, standing near the doorway, subtly raised her phone, recording just in case. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was exact. I turned and began to leave. The sticky note still clung to the chair, a bright yellow flag of quiet defiance. As volunteers started cleaning up, my phone buzzed on the table where I'd set it. A message from Anita, an audio file. I pressed play without thinking. Her microphone had accidentally picked up the sound from earlier, Aileen's voice, casual and clear, echoing across the hall's PA system now connected by Bluetooth. "She'll calm down," it said. "She always does." The words spilled into the open air before I could stop them. Every head turned. Aileen froze, her phone halfway to her ear, her expression cracking in real time. Etan's smile vanished. His eyes darted between his mother and me. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I simply reached over, turned off my phone, and looked straight ahead. "Not anymore," I said. The microphone caught it cleanly. The silence that followed was thick, alive, the kind that can't be taken back. It was the sound of something ending, the moment people stop underestimating the quiet ones. For once, my silence wasn't background noise. It was the headline. Monday morning dawned gray over Plano, the kind of sky that made the whole cul-de-sac look washed clean and tired. I turned onto Cedar Trail with both hands steady on the wheel. The street was quiet, just sprinklers hissing and one dog barking 2 houses down. All the family cars were gone. Perfect. I parked by the curb and sat for a moment, watching sunlight glance off the kitchen window. The house looked smaller somehow, but it was still mine. Every brick, every lavender-scented floorboard. I stepped out, unlocked the front door with my spare key, and inhaled the faint aroma of the cleaner I'd always used. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "Still my house," I whispered, touching the door frame. "Still my name on the deed." The sealed yellow envelope I'd left on the dining table was exactly where I'd placed it, untouched, as if waiting for an audience. I sat down and opened it carefully, the paper rustling like it knew what was coming. Inside lay the printed copy of the scanned signature draft, the same one Aileen had mistakenly sent to my email. I ran my fingers down the page until my eyes caught the altered date. A clumsy attempt to post-date the supposed transfer. I circled it in red pen, firm and deliberate. "Always check the date before the deed," I murmured. The quiet of the dining room echoed with my own calm certainty. By mid-morning, I was at the HOA office, a beige building tucked behind the community park. Shanda, the treasurer, greeted me with a wide smile. "Arlise, haven't seen you in a bit. Everything okay?" "Getting there," I said. She led me into her cubicle stacked with color-coded binders. When I asked about the homeowner roster, she didn't hesitate, pulled the file from the cabinet and handed it over. My name, Arliss K. Donovan, printed neatly beside the property address, still listed as the owner. Beneath it, a note in neat handwriting. Pending ownership transfer. Awaiting notarized approval. I snapped a photo. Pending means mine, I said lightly. Shonda laughed, unaware of how much those 3 words steadied me. Then she frowned, flipping a few more pages. "This just came in," she said. It was a notarized document, fresh ink, recent date, bearing my name and a signature that mimicked mine but lacked the small upward flick I'd made since high school. My stomach didn't drop. It hardened. I looked at her. "Who submitted this?" "Aileen, I think, but—" She studied the page. "You didn't sign this. I've seen your checks. This isn't you." "I didn't," I confirmed, my voice even. "I'll need a scanned copy sent to my lawyer. Frida—" Shonda nodded quickly. "Of course. And Arliss, keep me posted. I'll keep this on file, just in case." I met her eyes. "Keep it safe. You might be called to testify." Back in my car, I called Frida. She answered on the first ring, her tone brisk and warm all at once. "Morning, cousin. You sound like someone who finally opened the right file." "I did," I said, and told her everything. The fake signature, the altered date, the HOA confirmation. "Send me every screenshot, every file," she said. "We'll freeze the title transfer today." Within 10 minutes, the documents were scanned, faxed, and emailed. I sat in the driver's seat, watching the light shift through the windshield, and finally exhaled. "Funny," I said into the phone. "How silence sounds like strategy when you have proof." Frida laughed. "You're about to teach them the cost of underestimating a mother." I hung up, closed my leather folder, and locked the front door behind me. I didn't bother looking back at the house. I didn't need to. Some victories don't require witnesses. By the time they realized I'd been home, the house would already be legally mine again, twice over. The morning sun spilled across the dashboard, catching in the thin scratches of the windshield I never bothered to replace. My phone rang, and Frida's name filled the screen. I took a breath before answering. "Good news first," she said, voice crisp and alive with caffeine. "Title transfers frozen. They can't touch the property." I exhaled so slowly the steering wheel seemed to soften under my hands. "And the bad news?" I asked. "Their lawyer tried to rush a quitclaim filing late last night. I stopped it using your time-stamped evidence." I glanced at the binder on the passenger seat, each tab color-coded, each document labeled, proof stacked neatly against chaos. "Paper trails don't lie," I murmured. "They don't," she agreed. "People do. But paper keeps the receipts." Frida's office smelled of strong coffee and toner, a comforting mix of caffeine and competence. She waved me in, her curly hair pinned up messily, a legal pad covered in blue ink spread across her desk. "I drafted a letter to their attorney," she said, handing it over. The header read, "Cease and desist, forgery, coercion, and misrepresentation." I read every line twice before speaking. "Add one more phrase," I said, tapping the page. "Attempted emotional exploitation. It matters." Frida raised an eyebrow. "That's not standard legal language, but I like it. Adds teeth." She grinned. "You'd make a terrifying lawyer. Arliss." I smiled faintly. "Just a tired mother with a good memory." She nodded. "The most dangerous kind." When she slid the bank document across the table, my heart ticked once before catching up. The red block letters screamed, "Account under review, temporarily frozen." It was the joint account Avery had convinced me to open years ago for convenience. Frida leaned forward. "They can't withdraw a cent without your authorization. Every transaction's been flagged." I stared at the line item, the frozen balance shimmering like justice. "So they finally know what it's like," I said softly, "to wait on my permission." I signed the verification papers with steady strokes. My name looked strong, unapologetic, ink reclaiming what had always been mine. The phone rang again. Avery's name pulsing across the screen. I hesitated, then answered. His voice cracked through static. "Mom, why are you doing this? We're family." I stared out the window, watching the traffic lights blink red, then green. "You remembered that word too late." He sighed hard. "Aileen didn't mean any harm. She just thought it was easier." "Intent doesn't cancel impact," I interrupted. "You let convenience rewrite loyalty." "You've turned this into war," he said quietly. "No," I answered, my tone calm as ice. "You declared it the day you erased my name." The silence between us grew sharp. I could hear his breathing, his confusion, his pride crumbling on the other end. Then I ended the call. My hand trembled once, just enough to feel it, then steadied. Outside the courthouse, I sat in my car as couples passed by, holding hands and laughing, unaware of how fragile their balance was. Love, when mixed with entitlement, curdles into control. That's what I'd learned too late and was unlearning now. I opened my phone's voice memo app and spoke softly. Proof is peace. Emotion is noise. The clock on the courthouse bell struck noon. The sound rolled over the parking lot like a promise kept. I started the engine, the hum of it grounding me back into motion. The folder beside me glowed faintly in the sunlight, its edges catching gold. My armor wasn't loud, it was documented. Tomorrow, they'd learn what happens when the house you stole becomes the evidence that buries you. The notary office smelled faintly of lemon polish and old toner. I arrived 10 minutes early, binder tucked under my arm, every tab in order. Green for legal, blue for financial, red for personal. Frida followed close behind, crisp as always, her voice calm but razor sharp. "We stay factual," she murmured. I nodded once, watching the clock hands edge toward noon. The waiting room hummed with fluorescent stillness. When Avery and Aileen entered, their low argument buzzed like a faulty wire. I didn't rise. I placed my phone on airplane mode, set my pen parallel to the deed copy, and let silence hold its shape around me. Mr. Rios, the notary, had the patience of someone who'd seen every version of human greed. He opened his archival ledger, a thick book with marbled edges, and his digital register side by side. "We're verifying signatures from 3 separate filings," he said. His tone carried no judgment, just procedure. He compared the recent transfer document against my notarized signatures spanning 20 years of HOA correspondence and refinancing forms. "Pressure pattern differs," he noted, tracing the loops with a magnifying lens. "Stroke order inconsistent. And this signature," he tapped the new one, "was not signed in my presence." Aileen's face paled. Avery shifted, eyes fixed on the table. Mr. Rios printed a certified statement, stamped it twice. Once for the ledger, once for the record. The sound of the stamp echoed like a verdict. Frida stood and slid a sealed USB drive across the desk. "Notarized affidavit of authenticity," she said. "Chain of custody intact." Mr. Rios plugged it in. The faint whir of the computer filling the room. He read aloud a single line from the transcript. "She'll calm down. She always does." The silence afterward was thick enough to hear the hum of the fluorescent light. Aileen's lips trembled. Mr. Rios didn't glance up as he attached the printed transcript to the official packet. Proof spoke. I didn't need to. I folded my hands on my lap, breathing evenly, feeling the weight of years shift ever so slightly in my favor. Next came the county confirmation. Frida laid the document flat. Title transfer frozen pending investigation. The official seal gleamed faintly under the office lamp. "Ownership remains with Arliss K. Donovan," Frida said, voice even. Mr. Rios affixed his own notice to send to the HOA, verifying the status. Shonda's earlier email confirming my standing was appended as supporting evidence, Avery whispered. Mom, and please. His tone a mixture of shame and desperation. I didn't answer. My silence was deliberate now, shaped by boundaries, not fear. When the formalities ended, I reached into my binder and pulled out a single page. One more document, I said. Mr. Rios took it, brows lifting slightly. Not legal, I clarified, but binding. If they choose. I slid it across to Avery. It outlined a 60-40 property division proposal, delayed, not denied. It required family therapy between us for 6 months, a written apology to Eaton acknowledging what happened, and a household conduct clause for Aileen, no derogatory remarks, no financial actions under my name. If you accept, I said, I pause all civil damages. If not, Frida proceeds. My tone was firm, not cruel. Frida stayed silent but smiled faintly, understanding the difference between punishment and principle. Avery stared at the paper, then up at me. 48 hours, he said quietly. Please. Aileen said nothing. Her jaw was set, her eyes wet but defiant. Mr. Rios wrote the time down in his ledger, stamped the corner, and closed the book with a soft thud. I gathered my pen, straightened my binder, and stood first. No need to say goodbye. Outside, the air was bright, almost too bright, as if the day itself wanted to witness. I walked to my car without turning back. By sundown, the only signature that mattered was the one I wrote for myself. No more erasing me. Thursday morning began with the whistle of Anita's kettle. A sound that always made the house feel like safety had a shape. Steam fogged the kitchen window as I poured tea, the scent of chamomile wrapping around me. My phone buzzed, an unfamiliar number. Voicemail left. I pressed play and heard a woman's voice I hadn't expected. Aileen's mother. Arliss, I'm so sorry, she began. Her tone trembled between shame and pleading. I raised her better than this. Please, for Eaton's sake, let us make amends. I stood still, the mug warm in my hands. No bitterness, just a tired understanding. I didn't return the call. I saved the voicemail, labeled it Apology Third Party, and whispered to the rising steam. Boundaries first, kindness second. By mid-morning, I sat on a park bench near the duck pond. The breeze carried the sound of water lapping against the stones. Eaton rode up on his bike, helmet crooked, sneakers untied. He grinned shyly before handing me a folded drawing. I opened it carefully. His crayons had drawn a living room, a yellow sticky note on a chair labeled Grandma. Above it, a speech bubble. If I save you a seat, will you still be here? I felt something in me loosen. I pulled him close. Love doesn't disappear, I told him, but respect has rules. He nodded, eyes wet. Mom says you'll calm down. I brushed his hair back gently. This time, I said, I'm calming forward, not down. He smiled faintly. I took a photo of the drawing from my archive, then slipped the original back into his hand, a quiet promise that I wasn't leaving, just changing shape. Noon brought a sharp ping from my phone, an email anonymous, with the subject line, For Your Records. Inside was a forwarded HR thread from Aileen's company. The text was polished, corporate, cruel. Aileen had written about managing a household efficiently thanks to a live-in older relative who handles everything for free. Photos from the Skyline dinner were attached. Wine glasses, polished smiles, me nowhere. A manager's reply, great optics for regional. Family support is everything. I read the line twice before forwarding the entire chain to Frida. Subject, pattern, public image, private exploitation. I muttered. They told the world I was their invisible infrastructure. Frida's reply came within a minute. Admissible for motive and pattern. Keep headers intact. I smiled without joy. Documentation. My fluency in a language they'd forgotten I spoke. By late afternoon, my phone rang again. Avery. His voice cracked before the apology even formed. "Etan told me he saw you," he said. "He drew you a picture." I stayed silent, letting the quiet settle like dust. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said finally, and I could hear the sincerity grinding against years of habit. "You're sorry when something breaks," I answered. I asked for respect before it did. His voice faltered. I knew about the HR email. I didn't stop it. That confession landed heavier than any insult. "Then start here," I told him. "Write the apology to your son, not to me. Tell him why excluding me was wrong." A pause. Then a rasping, "Okay. By tonight?" I hung up first. Some lessons had to end in silence. At 3:42 p.m., a new email arrived from Shanda at the HOA. Emergency board session, Friday 6 p.m., regarding title dispute and conduct. Attached was the agenda, my legal ownership listed clearly, alongside alleged forgery filings. I printed it, slid it into the folder marked Community, outside. Anita's wind chimes sang under a sudden gust, small metal sounds heralding big weather. By 7:11 p.m. My phone lit up again. A photo from Avery, a handwritten letter addressed to Etan. His penmanship uneven, words scratched but clear. Excluding Grandma was wrong. Adults must model respect. I promise you'll never have to hide your love for her again. I didn't reply. I saved it under Repair, Start. Then I turned off the kitchen light, letting the quiet hum of the refrigerator fill the room. One small sound, one small choice, entirely mine. Tomorrow the neighborhood would hear my name out loud, and no one would dare whisper invisible again. The community room smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and coffee. Folding chairs scraped against the linoleum as neighbors shuffled in, murmuring in polite half-whispers. I walked in with my binder pressed to my chest, tabs still color-coded, pages crisp. Shanda stood by the table near the projector, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Donovan," she said, checking the list, "you're on the agenda." Her tone carried quiet respect, not pity. I nodded and took the seat by the aisle. Avery and Aileen sat apart, his jaw tight, her hands restless. The recorder's red light blinked steadily from the front of the room. My exit, I noted, was always within reach now. Shanda called the meeting to order at 6 sharp. Agenda item 3, she read aloud. Title dispute, alleged forgery, and conduct affecting residents. The words landed like gavel strikes. She summarized the notary's verification, the county's freeze order, and the HOA's bylaw section on fraudulent filings. Each fact was followed by a pause, the kind of silence that thickens when truth finally finds air. Then came the sentence that rippled across the room. Owner of record remains Arliss K. Donovan. A few gasps broke through the stillness. I felt the faintest tremor in my hands, but kept them folded, edges of my palms cool as porcelain. Shanda began projecting the documents. Mr. Rios's ledger excerpt, the notarized timestamp from the recorder's office, and the HOA roster listing my name in bold. I didn't speak. I simply passed my written statement to the board clerk. 1 page, concise, all evidence. Mrs. Chen, my next-door neighbor, stood unexpectedly. Her voice was steady. "I've seen her every morning taking out trash before dawn," she said. "She washes that family SUV by herself, never once thanked in public." Her words hung in the air longer than any legal notice. The room went still. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Being seen was its own form of testimony. When Aileen spoke, Her voice wavered between control and collapse. "This was a misunderstanding," she began. "A family issue that got blown out of proportion. We've had tension, that's all." Shanda's reply was surgical. "Did you submit or benefit from any document with a signature that isn't hers?" Aileen blinked hard. The pause said everything. Avery leaned forward, eyes tired. "We did not have her consent," he admitted quietly. The collective exhale from the room sounded like a wind leaving a house whose windows had finally been opened. Shanda straightened her notes. "Findings," she said clearly. "The HOA recognizes Ms. Donovan as the sole property owner. Any further forgery attempts will be referred for legal review and subject to fines." Papers shuffled. "I am also proposing behavioral and access boundaries for shared spaces, effective immediately." Neighbors nodded. A few clapped softly. My name echoed once more, this time through a microphone, spoken clearly, no hesitation. Hearing it felt strange, like reclaiming a birthright that had been misplaced, not lost. The final motion came at 7:58 p. Shanda read it aloud. A 90-day cooling-off clause restricting unscheduled contact, banning property-related social media posts, and mandating mediation before any future disputes. Violations will incur escalating fines and security notice. She asked for votes. Hands rose, one after another, nearly unanimous. The motion passed. Shanda turned to me. "Ms. Donovan, as owner, please sign the minutes." I signed slowly, firmly. The recorder's red light blinked twice, then went dark with a soft click. I gathered my binder, thanked Shanda quietly, and stood. As I walked toward the door, the hum of low conversations followed, but this time, my name was part of them. The neighborhood had spoken. Now it was the company's turn. Monday morning, sunlight spread through the blinds in neat, golden lines. My laptop chimed, a new email from Frida. The subject line read, "Corporate action completed." I clicked it slowly, savoring the stillness around me. Her message was short and exact. HR has issued a formal reprimand to Aileen for falsifying family information and misuse of company image. She's on unpaid leave pending review. Then, a final line that made me exhale. "They cited your documentation chain. Textbook precision." I forwarded the message to my archive and labeled it Closure Professional. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. The cursor blinked like a steady heartbeat. "Proof speaks louder than pain," I whispered, and closed the laptop. By mid-morning, the mail truck stopped outside my gate. The driver waved. I waved back. When I opened the small brown parcel, I found a laminated sheet, Etan's crayon drawing, preserved like treasure. Beneath it lay a note in Avery's handwriting, steadier than I'd seen in years. "Thank you for teaching me that silence can be strength and paper can be armor. I'm learning." I touched the glossy surface, tracing the crayon lines where he'd drawn that yellow sticky note on the chair. Memory folded into present tense. I set the drawing against my lamp, then placed my thick binder, my fortress of receipts, deeds, and timestamps, on the table and gently closed it. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like defense. It felt like closure. At 3:15 p.m., the school bell rang, spilling laughter and sneakers across the playground. I stood by the fence as Etan ran toward me, his backpack bouncing, cheeks flushed. He held up a new drawing, a house with 3 windows glowing yellow. "Grandma," he said, panting. "I told Mom I want family dinner again, but this time, you picked the place." I couldn't help but laugh softly. "All right," I told him. "Somewhere with real napkins." He giggled and nodded, that missing tooth smile lighting up the space between us. across the parking lot. Aileen stood by her car, watching. Our eyes met briefly. I gave a small nod, acknowledgement, not forgiveness. She looked down, then helped Ethan with his helmet. The wind lifted his drawing from my hand. I caught it before it flew away. 3 windows. 3 lights. Maybe one was mine again. Evening settled gently over Cedar Trail. I walked out to the mailbox as cicadas tuned their song. Among the bills and flyers sat an official envelope from the county recorder's office. My breath caught as I tore it open. Inside, the letter was crisp, embossed with the county seal. It read, title confirmation, ownership, Arliss K. Donovan, status, final. The word gleamed in silver ink, permanent as relief. I held it against my chest, then carried it inside, pinning it beside a photograph of my late husband. "We built this once," I whispered. "I protected it twice." The paper fluttered slightly in the fan's breeze, sounding like soft applause. As the sun dipped low, I set a small table for one, white plate, linen napkin, a single candle, and a glass of wine breathing quietly beside it. The house hummed with peace. Outside, porch lights flickered across the neighborhood, a constellation of ordinary lives. I raised my glass toward my own reflection in the window, older, steadier, no longer invisible. "Respect," I said softly, "tastes better when it's earned." The wine went down smooth, leaving no bitterness. When I blew out the candle, the darkness that followed felt earned, too, like rest, not absence. Later, in my quiet home office, I opened my journal. The pen moved easily. Paper trails end, but lessons stay inked on the heart. I looked at the binder on the shelf, its edges catching the lamplight. It didn't need to be opened again. It only needed to exist. When they finally remembered to invite me, I was already home, right where I belonged. Looking back, I realized this story was never just about a house, a dinner, or a missing invitation. It was about the quiet power of boundaries. How sometimes choosing silence isn't surrender, but self-respect. I learned that proof, patience, and dignity can rebuild what pride tried to destroy. No one can erase you if you refuse to disappear. If you've ever felt overlooked, take heart. You still have time to reclaim your voice and write your own ending. Don't let anyone else define what family, respect, or home means to you. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Did this story touch something familiar in your life? Type 1 in the comments if it did, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this still matter, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. Let's keep reminding each other, it's never too late to stand tall, with quiet grace.